All right, so I made some sauerkraut a couple weeks ago, and I've been getting a lot of questions on how we did it, what's involved, and it's really simple. I'm gonna show you how to make this in this video right now. Sauerkraut is fermented, and that little funkiness you taste in the sauerkraut or even other fermented foods, that is bacteria growing, and that's an anaerobic bacteria, a lactic acid producing bacteria. Humans have been fermenting food for thousands of years, and we've evolved to eat a fermented food like this. It's a way of preserving before we had refrigerators or freezers. So fermented food, especially sauerkraut, is extremely good for your gut health. And if you've been looking into any kind of health things lately, you probably run into something about improving your gut biome or the good bugs in your gut. And one way to do that is eating fermented foods like sauerkraut. And sauerkraut is probably the easiest one to make. So we want that lactic acid bacteria to flourish and push out other bad bacteria. The bad bacteria, that's what makes the food spoil. The anaerobic bacteria, or the lactic acid producing bacteria, is what gives it the good sour taste. So we have aerobic with air or anaerobic without air. Aerobic, the air would spoil the cabbage, spoil the sauerkraut, and we'd just be molding food. Anytime you find like moldy food in your refrigerator, it's because air has gotten in and spoiled that food. Anaerobic, without air, we're gonna leave a liquid barrier that you'll see soon that's going to prevent basically air from getting down to the cabbage, and that will be an anaerobic fermentation. Now you can get a yeast buildup, like a white buildup, and that's okay. You can just scoop that off and keep it fermenting. If you get any mold that's colorful or fuzzy, I would just throw the whole thing out and maybe start over. So for best results, we're gonna wanna keep this between 60 and 75 degrees. That's a good range to keep this fermentation going for a few weeks. Anything colder will just slow the fermentation down and it'll just take too long. Anything warmer will speed it up too fast, and that heat can cause all sorts of things to grow that you don't wanna grow, and that would be like your bad bacteria. So the ratio we're looking for here is 5 pounds of cabbage to 3 tablespoons of salt. And that's really all you need. I'm gonna add some carrots in mine and also some jalapenos this time. The first round I didn't add any jalapenos, I just wanted to kind of do a basic run. But this time we're gonna add jalapenos. You don't have to if you're not into spicy things. And one thing with fermentation is if you do add jalapenos, garlic, or spices, just add a little bit. With the fermentation cycle, it breaks those jalapenos down or those peppers and really introduces that flavor, so it can get real intense. So a little bit goes a long way here. But that's enough talking about it. Let's go and make it. Coffee mug plug. So first thing I'm gonna do here is I'm gonna weigh these cabbage. You could have weighed these at the grocery store when you picked them up or farmer's market. I just want to get an idea of how much they weigh. So that one's just over 4 pounds. And then this one it's about 2 pounds. So I'd say about 6 pounds altogether, a little over 6 pounds. So remember that ratio is every 5 pounds of cabbage, 3 tablespoons of salt. So for this one, I'll just do a little bit more than 3 tablespoons. And it's not rocket science. It doesn't have to be exact. Just, pretty close is fine. So it's pretty wild. All vegetables have anaerobic bacteria on them. And that's actually what starts eating up the cabbage and creating that sour flavor in the fermentation cycle. So what we're gonna do with these 2 heads, I'm using 2. You could just use 1 head. It really depends on how big of a jar you have for the fermentation. But for these guys, I'm just gonna cut up, kind of quarter them here. If you have a mandolin, you could use that. That actually makes really good work of these cabbage, I'm just gonna slice them up. And to slice them, I like to do to quarter them, and then I'm just going to do real thin slices. Now you know you're done cutting up the cabbage when you've made a huge mess, like the one I have. So I got all the cabbage cut up. I'm just gonna do a few slices of this here carrot. Just gives it a little extra texture, you know. Plus, who doesn't love carrot? So that will probably be enough of that. And then, like I said, we're gonna do some jalapeno this time. Okay, so here's our carrots sliced up and a few jalapeno. We'll add all this to a big old bowl and start smushing. Okay, I've got my cabbage, carrots, and jalapenos added to a large container. You could use like a food grade bucket or just whatever you have on hand that's large enough to hold everything. So I'm gonna do 1, 2, 3 tablespoons, and remember it was like 6 pounds, so I'm just gonna go a little bit more. Now, if you do just one head of cabbage, you could use a lot smaller bowl, but when you do slice it up, it kind of grows on you pretty fast. So once we start breaking this down though, it'll kind of shrink back down. So the first time I made this, I figured this step would probably not take all that long, but it does take quite a while. I've kind of looked at the clock, checked the time. I'm gonna see how long this actually takes. What we wanna do is start really smashing this down until it creates a liquid, and that salt that we added is gonna draw all the liquid out of the cabbage. Now we're not adding any liquid in here, it's just cabbage. So you can see on the bottom it's like dry, I guess, or there's no liquid. So as I start smashing this down and really crushing it and grinding it, it's gonna produce a lot of liquid. So I've been kind of smashing this around for about 5 minutes, and you can tell it's really breaking down. And it's also, it looks wet, a lot wetter than when I started. So I'll keep going, and it's just gonna create more and more moisture. It's been about 10 minutes of just straight smashing it down like that. It's becoming a real nice consistency. If you see any, because I didn't cut the core out, if you see any big hard chunks, you go ahead and take those out. They're just not gonna really break down all that well. And I'm starting to get, if you smash it, I'm starting to get more and more liquid in the bottom, and that's what we want. So let me keep going and we'll see how long this actually takes. So last time I did this, you hit a point where it's just, there's so much liquid that's created. See all that liquid? And it's just me just smushing it like this, smushing over and over. Let me see if I can tip this. See all that water that's draining down there? That's the liquid that's gonna sit on top of our sauerkraut as it's fermenting. So one thing I was doing was smashing it with my hand, which gets pretty tiresome. Using my knuckles to really smash it down. And also, if I kind of pile it all up on the side here, I can use the sauerkraut itself and almost like grind it down into itself. Pile it up and grind it, pile it up and grind it. So we've been going about 10 minutes. I'm gonna keep going. We're just gonna keep creating more and more juice. So it's been about 15 minutes, and you can see how much liquid I've gathered down there just by crushing it. The only reason I'm telling you that it took 15 minutes, just so you have an idea of actually how long this takes to get that kind of liquid to come out of the cabbage. The first time I did this, I thought, oh, this will just take, a couple minutes. And then you get going and it's like, wow, you have to really get after this cabbage to get that liquid to come out. But you need a lot of liquid like this because we need that liquid to cover up all this cabbage when we put it in the jar. And that'll be our next step. I've got this big jar. I'm just gonna start kind of scooping it in there. Try not to make any more of a mess than I already have made. And hopefully this will all fit in here. I got this bigger jar from the store instead of using one of the smaller kind of mason jars like I did last time. But what you want to do, if you make a mess, that's okay. But what you want to try to do is any of that liquid, like that liquid that's dripping, you want to get that in the jar. The liquid is the most valuable because we need the most liquid to cover up the cabbage. Now this looks kind of gross, but I promise it's all worth it in the end. And this is something you can do with your kids too. It's almost like a science experiment in the kitchen. See, I think it's all gonna fit. And what we'll do for fermentation, you can go anywhere from 5 days to 5 weeks. So the longer you let it sit, the more of that bacteria that's gonna grow and the sour or more zingier it'll be. The last jar I did, I went 2 weeks and it was really good. So this one, I'll probably just stick with 2 weeks. But feel free to experiment with different time frames. Okay, I'm gonna keep smashing this down. Do you see all that liquid come to the top? I'm gonna keep smashing and smashing and smashing. And you could actually, if you only did one head and you had a big jar like this, you could probably do all the smashing we did before. Do it in a, right in the jar like this and not in a different container. I do it in that big container just so it's easier to get your hand in and really mix it around. But you can see all that liquid, that's all from the cabbage. I didn't add any water to this. So remember that anaerobic fermentation, we need this cabbage to be below the surface of the liquid. Push it down. The last one I did, I just made sure it was all pushed down, and every day I came with a spoon or some other kitchen utensil and kept pushing it down to keep the cabbage below that surface. But I have a good inch of water there, so that should be good. So I'm gonna come back every day and make sure that this is all pushed down. I'll probably use like a spoon or something, not my hand. But you wanna be checking on this, so don't forget about it. Even if you have a lot of liquid in there and it's covering up your cabbage good, you still want to check on it every few days to make sure there's no buildup on the top. And if there is, and it's just like a white kind of yeasty buildup, remember you can scoop that off, but you definitely want to check on this. So in 2 weeks, we'll have some sauerkraut. Okay, see, I told you it was easy to make. A little bit of cabbage, carrot, jalapeno if you want it spicy. You need that liquid barrier on top. I'm gonna leave this in this jar for 2 weeks. This type of jar has like a clasp on it. I'm just gonna leave it loosely done. You want some of those air bubbles to come out. And remember, check on this every day or every couple of days, check on it. And this is the final product. You can kind of tell, look at how different the color is. If you try this recipe, if you wanna call this a recipe, science experiment, let me know how it goes. I want to hear the pitfalls. I want to hear the success stories. I want to hear it all. And let me know what you think about the taste. So I did mine for 2 weeks and it has what I would call just the right amount of zing, but it's still crispy. So it's really good. So thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed it and I can't wait for you to try sauerkraut. bacteria's out. Now, disclaimer here, I've only made one batch of this. Was it excellent? You're damn straight. Used to build up on top. That's okay. Hold on, Bubba. Anything I can improve on, any tips that you have you can share with everyone? Maybe a ghost in the house. Let me know. This is always an awkward ending. We'll see you around. Just look. Sauerkraut.